Today we will be talking about communication skills, ethical IP issues that are required. In general, I think there is nothing new that you will be learning today. I am pretty sure most of it, if not all of it, you guys already know. Having said that, we still face a lot of issues with communication. Almost every one of us. I face it myself too. So this is a continuous learning process, and in this, what I try to do is show you some of the issues, and I think the best way to learn is to see what are the problems in various types of communications, and we will be able to relate to quite a few of those ourselves. And then what I would like you to really take out of here is that it is important to pay attention to those kinds of things which we probably think is not very important and let them go, but they end up being major issues. So let's start with an invocation to the Lord. I am a fairly spiritual person. So what does that mean? Now, Sindhura, I did not find anything in Sanskrit which means Sindhura. The closest I found is Sindhura, Sindhura Varna. Varna is color. Sindhura means elephant. Now, we can say, okay, elephant-headed god, probably that's what they mean. But elephants, we don't see them in the color that is depicted in these Ashtavinayak idols. The other version that we heard was Sindhu Ravana. What is Sindhu? Sindhu is ocean. And we are headed toward Lanka, and there is the Ravana. What really should have been said is Sindhura Varna. Sindhura is that color, vermilion. So essentially, by changing that small word there, you have changed the meaning. You have either changed the color, which is not that, or you have just changed the whole god. That's the power of communication. You can alter the meanings if you don't understand what you are saying just by making small changes here and there, and we will be going through quite a bit of this as we go along. We will see some videos, we will see some email, blogs, etc., etc. But that's what I want you to keep in mind, that it's very important that you understand what you are talking about and then you talk about it. I'm not questioning the musicians, they are great. I can never even think of being as great as they are. But I will still fight on the fact that they didn't understand what they are singing. Before we continue, I just wanted to have a note because I am using quite a lot of images from websites and other places that references to many of these images wherever possible. I have put them right in the slide itself, but wherever I felt that it was going to clutter the thing, like in the previous slide, all the references are at the end of the thing. I do not want to plagiarize anything. I want to, especially when I am in an ethics class. So I wanted to put them. Of course, we will learn later on that just by putting that also may not be enough. Copyright is not equal to plagiarism. Even if I have a good intention, I am taking care of the plagiarism aspect, I may still be violating copyrights. We will get to that. But that's why I try to understand to the best of my abilities what was involved, and to the best of my knowledge, these are either coming into fair use category, where for educational use you can use a lot of things, so fair use category is public domain images or commons licenses, and we will talk about this later on. So the communication story, first of all we will focus only on this aspect. This is the one that will take us most of the time. The ethics and IP part will be much shorter because I just want you to go with what is it that you need to be aware of. I will not give answers, I will raise a lot of questions in that section. But in communications, there is a lot more defined stuff. We will go into the definition, the various ways of communicating, the philosophy of the communication, how can you be effective communicators, what is at a high level, what do you need to know. Then We will go into issues with variety of examples, audios, videos. I'm not sure if I kept the blog one that I intended to, charts, email, etc. We will go through a lot of them, many of them very specific to your field, analytics. Then there will be some guiding principles of creating very effective presentations, and we will see some good and bad examples of presentations, and then technical reports, how you need to write. There won't be very different things in presentations and technical reports. To start with, what does communication really mean? Communication is to make common. The etymology is from communicare, which means to make common. What is it that means to make common? If you are communicating something to someone, whatever you feel about that topic, about that subject, as long as you are able to communicate that same message across, that's when you have made common. If they don't understand what you are talking about, if they don't feel the way you feel about that, there is something lacking in that communication. What are the variety of ways? Many ways, but there are broadly categorized written and oral. In the written ones, you have reports, papers, blogs, email, cases, and in oral, you have videos and audios that we will go through. We will see a lot of examples in both sections, and presentations have both the aspects. You have both written material that you are going to be showing, and you will be talking. So both aspects come. But what is common to all of them is that they all need to tell a story. And you have heard this enough number of times that you should be telling a story, you should be telling a story. And this has become a kind of a buzzword, tell a story. What is it to tell a story? And we will get into that. What is it to tell a story? But first of all, how do you plan that story? There are three things. And somehow I am beginning to believe, based on my experiences, that anything you do in life, if these are the three things that you focus on, you pretty much have nailed it down in everything. Always focus on the big picture. What is it with respect to communications? What is the message you want to take across? For that, what do you need to know? You need to know your subject well. If you do not know your subject well, if you do not know what really you want to communicate, the big picture at a very high level, if you do not have clarity of that message, you will not be able to communicate. Next one is put yourself in the audience's shoes. This is where we falter a lot, and it's natural because we know what we are talking about. We end up feeling that the other person also is at the same intellectual level, or has the same technical capabilities, or has similar cultural background as us. These are all, unknowingly we make assumptions about these things, and they all actually should not be made. Those assumptions should not be made. And that's where we falter, because the message does not go across. You have to put yourself in the customer's shoes to the extent possible, understand their psyche, understand their technical abilities, and then you present, then you communicate, and then you will get the message across. Do not just try to pump in whatever you know. The way you know is not the way the other person will receive it. So that will never work. This is where most of the communications fail, and without doubt paying attention to details. Every detail, every aspect of the message that you are communicating, is that related to the main big picture, the main message you want to communicate, or is it digressing? Are you talking about general stuff that you should not, that has no relationship to the main message? If it is not, even if it is important, get rid of that. You don't need that. Don't have unnecessary stuff built into your communications, into your presentations, into your technical reports, where people will just get sidelined. You have to focus. Focus always on the big picture, and every detail that you write from there on has to have a link to that. So how do you build the story? Now, you know that at a philosophical level, you need to know the big picture, you need to think from the end user's perspective, and you need to focus on the details. These are the only three things. I tell this when I teach any product development kind of a thing, you always have to know what you are building. Think of the product, think of the big picture. How are the users going to use it? Think from the audience's perspective. And then every small detail, right from every word that you write, anything that you do, every piece of code you write, everything has to be very systematically done, and there should not be even spelling mistakes there. That is the detail that I am talking about. Once you do all that, so whether it's product development or problem solving or communications, the philosophy that I am beginning to create for myself and I keep talking about everywhere is that these are the three things that you require. It's not easy. So let's go into how we can do that. It's a lifelong learning process anyway, as I initially mentioned, but you have to get started. You have to give attention to these three aspects. So what is it that is required to build a story? What is a story? A story has a beginning. A story has a middle. Now, if I end the story, you go to a movie. If suddenly the movie ends at intermission, how do you feel? Is the story communicated? No. So you have to have a beginning, you have to have a middle, and there has to be that flow. It has to be connected. The relationship should be there. When you are talking about the beginning, you are talking about defining a problem, a purpose. You are talking about introduction, giving some background history of what you are talking about. Any message that you want to talk about, a project that you are describing, what has been done in that subject. If you are talking about customer segmentation kind of a thing, in that field, what have other people done? You have to understand some history of that thing. All of that comes into the beginning. And then you will start thinking about the methodologies. How do you want to solve that problem? What are the experimental details if you are doing any experimentation like we would do in material science that we used to do? Techniques, algorithms, whatever it is, to achieve that purpose. What are you going to be, how are you going to be creating that solution? All that will come into the middle, the results. Then comes the climax. Sometimes some of our movies are just boring, there is no climax, the movie ends and you don't even know what is happening. But then, okay, let's assume your communication will have, and in this case I have just said that analyzing your results and discussing them is your climax. Pretty much you have got the results. Now how do you really put that story together? How does it relate to the main problem? And all the time, whenever you are talking, it needs to talk with respect to what has been said earlier. You cannot just suddenly come up with a completely new statement out of the blue and it has no relationship to your problems or the methodologies, the results, nothing. It cannot be there. Everything that you are writing, every single sentence that you are writing has to be linked to something that has been said before. And then comes the end. So a story has a beginning, a middle, a climax, and an end. The end is the summary, the conclusions, the benefits that the client is receiving, any future work, references, your code, appendices, further reading materials, anything. So if you break it down, the story is only that much. There is a beginning, define a problem, there is a middle, think of how the solution will go, how the solution will work, do some experiments, get the results, have a discussion around that and summarize the whole thing. That's, in a way, a simple, nice flow. That's the story. So, that's pretty much, yeah, we all knew that. But you have to pay attention to that every sentence, every slide that you are building. You have to see the link to the previous one. And that is where most of the time we falter. We are not paying attention to those things. We are just putting material together, throwing information together, just send it across. That should not be the case. It has to have a link. So we will go through a lot of these issues next to see what are the normal problems that we face. The first one, I said, always focus on the big picture, know your subject well enough that you can explain it to your 5-year-old kid or to a 70-year-old, 75-year-old person. You have to be able to do that entire thing. So the same topic, that the project that you are working on, you will explain it in a different way to a 5-year-old kid than to your peers, than to your 70-year-old or 80-year-old parents, grandparents. Ganesha is not Ravana. If you know your subject well, maybe people knew the subject well, they just didn't pay attention to it. So you have to be aware of that. Always put yourself in the audience shoes. Now we will play a video. They are talking about a hypothetical baseball team, and this guy says that baseball players have very odd names, and he gave them hypothetical names. That who, the name of the person on the first base is who, the name of the person on the second base is what, name of the person on the third base is I don't know, and likewise. So very strange names, and see how that actually leads into a lot of confusion.
Got to do it. Well, I'll tell you. Let me see. It looks all right. Okay, all right. Pretend with this. All right, I'll take it easy with that. With this, pretend that we're organizing a baseball team here at the retired actors' home, and I am the manager. Now, you're going to be the manager of the retired actors baseball team? Yes. I would like to join the retired actors baseball team. Oh, you would? I would like to know some of the guys' names on the team, so if I want to play with them, I know them, I meet them on the street or in a home here, I can say hello to them. Oh, sure. But you know they give baseball players nowadays very peculiar names. Oh, a lot of funny names. You know, like Sticky Fields. Sticky Fields. Goofy Dan. Poopy Bobber. Poopy Bobber. Well, let's see now. We have on our team. We have what's on second, I don't know's on third. That's what I want to find out, the guy's name. And that's what I want to find out, the guy's name. Now tell me, who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third. You know the manager of the baseball team? Yes. You know the guy's name? Well, I should. Well, you tell me the guy's names on the baseball team. I say, who's on first, what's on second, I don't know's on third. You ain't saying nothing to me yet. Go ahead and tell me. I'm telling him. You ain't said nothing yet. Go ahead and tell me. Who's on first, what's on second, I don't know is on third. You know the guy's name on the baseball team? Well, go ahead. Who's on first? Yes. I mean the guy's name. Who? The guy playing first. Who? The guy playing first base. Who? The guy on first base. Who is on first? What are you asking me for? I don't know. All right, you got a first baseman. When you pay off the first baseman every month, who gets the money? Every dollar. Every dollar. Who gets it? He does. Sometimes his wife comes down and collects it. Whose wife? Yes. Why not, Lou? He's earned it. Who did? Yes. Look, when you pay off the first baseman every month, you get a receipt from the guy? Sure. How does he sign his name? Who? The guy you give the money to. Who? The guy you give the money to. Well, that's how he signs it. That's how who signs it? Yes. Who's that coming? That's it. Who? Go ahead, tell me the pitcher's name. Tomorrow. Why not tell me today? I don't know tomorrow. Hey, tell me the pitcher's name. Tomorrow. All right, what time tomorrow you tell me the pitcher's name? What time what? What time tomorrow you tell me who's pitching? Who is not pitching? I throw the ball to whoever it is stops the ball so the guy runs a second. Who picks up the ball first? The what? What throws I don't know. I don't know. Throws back to tomorrow. Triple play. Could be. Another guy gets up and it's a long flat ball to be caught. Why? I don't know. He's on third and I don't give a darn. I said I don't give a darn. Oh, that's our shortstop.
So that's what happens when two guys are talking about two completely different things. It might have been just a funny clip here, but in reality this happens quite a bit. So you say something, the message gets across completely differently. Do not make blind assumptions that the audience that you are interacting with knows exactly the same thing that you do know. Now there is a CD drive there and it's being used as a coffee cup holder. And if people talk to you and they suddenly call the tech support and they say this, the coffee mug holder that you sent along with the computer is not working fine, you better try to understand their intellectual ability at that level and work with them. Otherwise you just keep on saying, we did not send you anything. That doesn't solve the problem. So you do not make blind assumptions about the intellectual capabilities of your audience as well. or I'm not just saying talking about intellectual, the technical capabilities, especially when you are talking analytics. You will have in your audience a lot of business people, a lot of technical people. They will not all be talking about the same language. You have to be very careful about the assumptions that you make. You will be getting carried away by the beauty of the algorithms that you have written, the results that have come out, and then you will be presenting all of that. The real guy who has to make a decision, the business guy, is going to be just dozing off, as some of you are right now. So you have to not make blind assumptions. You have to be specific. An ambiguous requirement could be create a means to transport a single individual from home to place of work, and the management is interpreting a bicycle. IT is interpreting a horse-drawn carriage, and the user is interpreting a sports car. You have to be very specific. You can't just say that you have to have a means of transporting a single individual from home to work. You can do it in multiple ways. So you have to be more specific when you are talking about it. You have to understand them. You have to understand your audience. You have to not make blind assumptions. You have to be specific. And you have to talk their language. This is very common. When we talk to clients abroad, we end up talking a lot of times lakhs, crores, etc. They don't understand what a lakh is, what a crore is. Even if you write a document, and if you write in terms of 10 lakhs, 50 lakhs, 5 crores, they will have no clue. Some of them may have a clue, but even then they get distracted. Why is he writing this way? Or why is she writing this way? It bothers them that you are not talking the same language. So 100,000, million, billion are universally acceptable. We know that, everyone else also knows that. Lakhs and crores, only we know that. So do not use terms which automatically, naturally come to you. Just think about that. That's what I also call about paying attention to details. You have to focus on every word. Don't just get carried away by giving away the information that you have. These small words can make a difference. I know that. Use date formats that are unambiguous. And this is a big problem. Even today I face problems when I write or see 11, 12, 14 or 12, 11, 14. I always have to spend a few seconds before I realize whether it's 11th December 2014 or November 12th 2014. So I have made it a habit over the past year or couple of years. I never write dates like this. I write 12 November 2014 or November 12, 2014, these kinds of things. Nobody on earth will have any problem with that. So think about those notations that are universally acceptable. Do not just go by one or the other. And then, this is a fairly common thing. We pass out in India, we pass out in UK also, but we graduate in US. Passing out in US is painting. So we don't paint, we graduate. Even kids graduate from kindergarten, they graduate. So, and we are graduates only when we do our bachelor's. So, but it's difficult. A lot of you may not be able to think about it all the time, but my intention here in today's class is to ensure that you pay attention, start paying attention, and over a period of time, the mistakes will be minimized. We will never get rid of all of these things. We cannot be experts in all various cultural behaviors and thinking, etc. We cannot be. We can never be. So, but we have to start thinking. Third one is, and I will have a lot of issues here, paying attention to details. And first of all, improve your vocabulary. Of course, we cannot be experts again. Even today, even this morning when I was trying to change a slide, I know the meanings of words, but I try to see whether in the context it makes sense or not. I have a vague understanding of the word, but I do go and consult dictionary.com or freedictionary.com, etc. to ensure that the word I am using really means what I am trying to say. I do that. Yesterday I went to dictionary.com multiple times and for a brief period it was down also. I went to freedictionary.com. You have multiple sites. Never assume that the word you know is correct. Me fail English, that's impossible. Impossible and impossible is not possible. So whatever it is. So improve your vocabulary. Consult dictionaries. I'm not saying we need to know all the English language that we know. We don't. Consult dictionaries. Pay attention to that detail. Don't depend on software. A lot of us do that. Problem sometimes will be that Word will not find any issue. If you read this job posting, simply put, our expertise with various vehicles, automotive technologies is as diverse as the people and experience we bring to cars. We believe in the power of ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Now that's what I need you to pay attention. Extra is perfectly correct English and correct spelling. Ordinary is also correct. But the meaning here is very different from the message they want to convey. What they want to convey is that we believe in the power of ordinary people to do extraordinary things, great things. What they have ended up saying is that we believe in the power of ordinary people to do extraordinary things. A lot more of ordinary things. That's the message that is coming across. Although we all, this is not a big problem because we all also understand that, yeah, it's a mistake. So, communication, the message may have still come across, but it's a distraction. Use words in the right context, and this is an email that I had received, and it was a spam. I normally don't read the spam mails, and luckily I read it, and whenever I see something very nice, interesting, I just save a copy, even though that may not have any value to me at that point of time, but somewhere or the other I end up getting the use for it. And this is one example of that, where this guy, he is not even Dr. whoever that is, these spam mails about making tons of money and all kinds of things they come from. So this was one mail where he was saying that he has dealings with Indians, and the guy is changing, now I want to deal with you, and it has to be strictly confidential, we are crooks and we have to just cheat the whole world and make money, kind of a message. So your role must be played perfectly, and the least I expect from you is betrayal. I don't want my organization to know the real cost of the product for obvious reasons. Contact me immediately. Now, what the least means, yeah, very little. So what this guy wants to say is that I do not want you to betray me. But what has he said? The least I expect from you is betrayal. At the very minimum, I want you to betray me. Betray me is what he is asking me, and that's what I did. I never responded to the guy, so I betrayed him. So, the word can have exactly the same opposite meaning than what you intended to convey. So you have to understand. If you do not know, I don't mean that everyone should know English and write a fairly complex sentence like that. Make it simple. I do not want you to betray me. What's the big deal with writing that statement? Don't try to be hi-fi and just write some fancy words. In fact, keep it simple. The more I see fancy words, the more it bothers me. I talk to people about GRE kinds of things, and I've seen some statements of purpose, and the first sentence is that this subject is very Orphic to me, and I was stunned. I said, what is Orphic? And ORPHIC, and I am struggling, and I still don't know what is Orphic, and I don't care. And then in the same paragraph where this sentence was copied from somewhere, and then they write something, and there are 100 spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes. Obviously, the guy who knows Orphic probably is not going to make those kinds of mistakes. I don't know what Orphic means, but so keep it simple. Simple English is good. We don't have to make things complicated. Least I expect from you is betrayal. We will listen to a couple of more things. Pay attention to the message. So not focus on technicalities, and I hope it plays. Okay, the volume was low because this is not showing me the volume control here. I could have controlled it here. And then the next one, some other one will just blast us out of space. So here again we saw, and I'm giving you examples from multiple fields, just audio, movies and these things. But be aware that this is applicable to anything that you do. So just an example is being given from there, but to highlight the importance of that error that is being made, which can be made in multiple ways. It need not be made only while singing or talking. It can be when you are writing. So do pay attention. So in the first one it said, and both are great singers, greats of all times. I do listen to them a lot, but again my problem is one person sang Santana Saubhagya Vidalana Nipunatharam. The other person sang Santana Saubhagya Vitarana Nipunataram. Vidalana, or in Sanskrit, la is not there, although the Devanagari script allowed me to put that. Vidalana is what in Hindi or Sanskrit we will write. In Marathi you will have Vidalana. So there is a difference between, and let's forget for the time being the dharam kind of meaning, but what was conveyed by the two singers is Vidalana means tearing apart. One who is skilled in tearing apart prosperity, happiness and progeny. Vitarana means bestowing or gifting. One who is skilled in bestowing or gifting prosperity, happiness and progeny. Two opposite meanings. One is saying that the God is giving, Santana Gopala is giving prosperity, happiness, progeny, etc. In the other case, it's tearing it apart, killing the whole thing. You are actually putting down the God. There are, and these are great musicians, there are some among them who actually don't make those mistakes. And if you listen to MS Subbulakshmi or Balamurthy Krishna, they pay attention to the meaning. The meaning is as important. And then there are great musicians, and I'll show you in the next video, where they openly say they don't care. Now here is one video I want you to hear. This is about a minute or so. How do I just click on this?
I was there, Puja Nayaka. I didn't care at that point. Honestly, Puja Nayaka Surasa Maja Shikara Kyadaga Rajamaya Sasamuja Raja Raja
This is the first time I heard him, E.M. Krishna, and I fell in love with his voice. And obviously he's a great musician also. I don't know music, but whatever he sang, it really felt good to hear, listen to that. But one aspect, and maybe he does not do that, but the message, the communication that came across from him, he said, it's Bhuja Nayaka, but I sing as Bhuja, I separate it. At that point I don't care. He said that. Now, maybe he is a technical master. He probably knows why he is doing that, and he can actually take care of it while he is singing. But a lot of budding musicians who might be listening to him now will go back with the message, yeah, it doesn't really matter. Let me just break it anywhere I want. I just want to focus on the musical aspects of it, the techniques of it. I don't care about the words, the bhava, the message that has to go across, the feeling that is in there. Obviously, none of these composers, Tyagaraja never wrote a kriti where it was only supposed to be music. It was all his devotion that was coming out. The message, the meaning has to go across it. It cannot be just your technical abilities, the techniques that you know. You have to communicate. Last week, I think on Monday, this article came. US to soon put a full stop to comma. And a Columbia University professor is saying that there won't be much loss of clarity if comma goes. One thing I want you to really understand is, even if experts say something, do not blindly trust them. Don't believe me also when I am talking about some things today. You have the right to object to anything that I say, to contest it. But you have to know your subject well before you do that. Now, if I have to just go on the face value, I don't know, I won't comment still on the ability or thinking or whatever of that Columbia University professor. But if I were to just go by on the face value of this article, and he is saying that from a lot of books that he has read, he has actually done a lot of research. If you remove commas, the message doesn't change. And we will see how message changes if you don't use commas properly. Now this is something that I wrote. If I have to say without a comma, real CCTV cameras and dummies have not been installed as discussed. Versus if I say real CCTV cameras and dummies have not been installed as discussed. Now this comma is making a difference, and let me explain that. Here it says they have not been installed as discussed. That means the discussion was that they should not be installed. So they have not been installed as we discussed. The second one here, however, means they have not been installed as discussed. The discussion was to install them, but the way they were installed probably were not as discussed. So that comma, that small simple comma, can make a difference. Now you may say, this is where the common mistakes happen. Now you will probably relate to either one of these things, or both of them. In your mind, it's exactly the same meaning. And I am perfectly fine, just like that US professor. He may think that I am just trying to now tell you something, and yeah, it makes sense, but when you first read it, both of them gave you the exact same message. Perfectly logical, that's perfectly fine. But you sent this email or a document to someone else. How will they read it? That person may be me or someone else, and I may read it completely different. So that's where the communication thing happens. It's not what you know, it's what are the possible ways your communication can be interpreted by the other person. And this is difficult. Now, there is no solution. I mean, if you read it 100 times, you will still feel the same way. The only thing you can do is take it to about 2-3 other people. Once you write the whole thing, not every sentence, take the whole thing. See what their reaction is, what is it conveying to them. Take that. Now, here again, this was yesterday's paper. This was in yesterday's paper, a review of Gunde, and let's go in this one paragraph. And she wrote, for no real reason or benefit to the film, okay, and I will pause briefly at each comma, which is the meaning of, purpose of that comma, a brief pause. A period or a full stop is a longer pause. For no real reason or benefit to the film, its characters, or even us, Zafar, who is responsible for the story, screenplay, dialogue, as well as direction, locates his film in a historical context, 1971, the creation of Bangladesh. This is a very confusing statement. I had to read it 2-3 times before I could understand what Suparna was really trying to say. She said, for no real reason, or first because I was reading it as for no real reason or benefit to the film, its characters or even us, Zafar, I said, what is it? It just suddenly it has changed. I don't understand what this English is. And then I reread it, and this is what she says: for no real reason or benefit to the film, its characters, or even us. Zafar, who is responsible for the story, screenplay, dialogue, as well as direction, locates his film in a historical context. 1971, the creation of Bangladesh. That's what she really is trying to say. But this is real bad English. It gets even worse if we were to listen to that professor from Columbia University. I have removed every comma from there. For no real reason or benefit to the film, its characters, or even us, Zafar, who is responsible for the story, screenplay, dialogue, as well as direction, locates his film in a historical context. 1971, the creation of Bangladesh. The only thing I could understand is 1971 creation of Bangladesh. Because I relate to that. Many others in other countries may not relate to that also. It could have been written in a different way, and I will try to use the same things. Maybe it could be broken down into a couple of different sentences, but the way it could be: Zafar, who is responsible for the story, screenplay, dialogue, as well as direction, locates his film in a historical context. In 1971, the creation of Bangladesh, for no real reason or benefit to the film, its characters, or even us. Maybe changing that might have, and I'm trying to just use whatever she has written and just twisting it. That would have been slightly better. I would still prefer this to be broken down into a couple of different sentences. Too many commas. Obviously, why would that Columbia professor not hate it? I mean, one paragraph has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 paragraphs, a dash. It's too much. You don't know where to pause. So sentences have to be simple, sweet, just simple. If it's a long sentence, break it down into multiple sentences. If it's a long paragraph, give paragraph breaks at logical intervals. I don't want to see a half-page paragraph. It's psychologically, I just get worried. Oh, I have to read that much. But if you break it down into smaller chunks, it just feels that, okay, I can read this. You have to play with the psychology of the people also. Communication involves that as well. It's not just your technical abilities, your English skills, etc. Understand the subtleties. Now here are a couple of examples of very common mistakes that I would say 99.9% of the Indians make. This is an article from a few months back. And here it says, he says that the integration of Hyderabad state with the Indian Union could have been done in a peaceful manner if the Nizam had little foresight. I'm sure most of you don't see any problem with that. Sorry, any problem with that? Okay, let me ask questions so that.
Comma after manner.
Comma after manner. Okay, anything else?
A little first. Little first. A little.
That's the thing. A little. Little is not equal to a little. Little means almost nothing. Just slightly above that nothing. Zero is zero. Little is almost zero. So the meaning here is that if the Nizam had almost zero foresight, the Hyderabad state could have been integrated into Indian Union in a peaceful manner. No, but the Nizam had a lot of foresight. If he had only a little, it would have been done peacefully. Which means that no, he did not have a little because it was not done in a peaceful manner. And that means he had a lot of foresight. Just because the Nizam had a lot of foresight, it was not done in peaceful manner. Meaning has been changed. That little is not that little. It's dangerously scary. And this happens with little and in the next example, few. These are the two things that you have to be careful of. So this you have to remember. There won't be a lot of these kinds of words. Little and few. When you are using them, be very careful about using them. To make a regular entry into Tollywood is very tough. It's an industry controlled by few. What that means is, it's an industry controlled by almost nobody. What he meant was, it's an industry controlled by a few. A very small number of people control it. That's what. And he's saying, it's controlled by zero, almost zero people. Again, exactly opposite meaning. So I wrote a paragraph where I have included all of these few, little, everything. So the quality of higher education institutes in India is in an abysmal state. Few would have imagined that a few INSOFE people and the few who believed in them would change all of that in a short span of time. Little did others realize that all it takes is a little belief and a lot of hard work to make the little waves that can turn into a tsunami and put India on the higher education map of the world. Now, here, few means almost nobody would have imagined that a few INSOFE people, Jagan, myself, thank you, and the few who believed in them, it's you. You have believed in us. So these are all of you. Believed in them would change in such a short period of time. Little did others realize, those who are not related to all of us, outsiders, that a little belief that Jagan and I had, or some Dr. let me not take on a little belief and a lot of hard work, obviously we did a lot of hard work, and okay, some small waves are happening. So the here refers to something solid, something specific. So the few, who are the few? I could have said a few INSOFE people and a few who believed in them, which means some other people who believe. But I am defining the few who believed in them. So without this part who believed in them, this is not being, you are not qualifying the few. The word the is being qualified by something specific that you are defining after that. The little waves. What are those little waves? The ones that can turn into a tsunami and put India on the higher education map of the world. That is the. So that is the difference of using few, a few, the few, little, a little, the little. Lot. And if you see some of those things, we have a mindset where we start getting bothered about the quality of the overall thing. So you have to, obviously I'm not saying mistakes will not be made, probably there will be something in my slides also somewhere. They will appear, you cannot get rid of everything, but you have to have that mindset to try to minimize any kind of spelling issues or something, or grammar issues. So you have to focus on that, you have to give importance to that aspect. So number 8 is avoid spelling and grammar mistakes. Now number 9, keep it simple, stupid. The KISS principle, K-I-S-S. Protégé, it's so boldly written here and it's a wrong spelling. This should be written if the typing allows, then you put that, otherwise at the very minimum this is what it should be. This is not just because some of us pronounce this as prodigy, it doesn't become prodigy. We have been opposing the proofread. I am saying just read what you have written. We have been opposing this and will always oppose Valentine's Day. This is not Indian culture and we believe that one does need a day to celebrate love. Does not is what he meant. Just read it again. And one thing you have to do, and I should mention that in the communications class, read newspapers. And when you are reading newspapers, maybe initially you should try to find mistakes and you will find lots of them. You don't have to work hard. And the other one, again in yesterday's paper. So Arvind Kejriwal stepped down, and I won't get into politics now. He was the second youngest CM of Delhi after Chaudhary Brahma Prakash, who took oath to the post at the age of 34. What is that? Who became chief minister or who took oath? What is who became took oath? He was wanting to write something, and it happens. It happens to me when I write some emails. I have a sentence in mind. I write something and then I think of a better way to write it and I take it, part of it and I write and 1 or 2 words just get left over. Happens to all of us. So be careful. That's why I said proofread and proofread, not just once. I do. I mean, when I write emails, I don't, before setting the hit button, I actually see the two CC, whatever is there, because sometimes damaging mails can go. Oh, now, okay, I'm scared to click on anything here. Let's hear.
You do? All right, sir, go ahead. It's 30 seconds.
Look at the green lights. The red light.
We need an energy bill that encourages consumption. And this war will end in the defeat of the terrorists and totalitarians.
Can you name the president of Chechnya?
No, can you? General, I can't name the general.
8 minutes.
General.
Prime Minister of India?
The new Prime Minister of India is, no.
Our enemies are innovative and resourceful. And so are we. They never stop thinking about new ways to harm our country and our people.
So, one thing is he doesn't know his subject. He doesn't know he's debating for becoming again re-election for the US presidency. Doesn't know the recently elected Indian Prime Minister, the largest democracy in the world. He says he knows the president president of Pakistan. I didn't say Pakistan there, but general. What's the name of the general? General. And totalitarians. So he doesn't know the words he could have used just terrorists. He is fumbling, and it's not that he doesn't do it very often. Once or twice it can happen to anybody. But when it happens, try to have a simpler words there. And the icing on the cake was the last one. The terrorists, what was it? They do not stop thinking about innovative ways to harm our country, and neither do we. Which means that we also never stop thinking about innovative ways of harming our country. That's not probably his fault, whoever wrote that. So, again, if you don't know the subject, you get into those kinds of situations. It does happen. I know when I was getting my master's and PhD, we were encouraged a lot to go to international conferences and present. And we had a PhD student who also was making a presentation. And she got stuck at one point. For the next 10 to 15 seconds, she was just like that. And believe me, that 10-15 seconds, you saw that 30-second thing. It's a long time. You don't want to be into that. So do not memorize your presentations. You have to just go through all your slides, think about the message, prepare the file. But suppose you don't, if you have really memorized all the words, you will be looking for that word. And the moment you don't remember that word, you get stuck. You cannot move forward. So never try to memorize anything. Understand the concepts that you want to talk about in that slide, and then just leave it at that. Because when the words don't come out, some other words will come out of your mouth. The moment you memorize something, gone.